Well, hello once again, everyone. This is Stephen and Nancy, and we're going to talk about step 12 today. And Lara, who's been moderating us for the last, uh, well, this is the 12th month. She's with us in spirit. So here we go. Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So this is our interpretation of step 12, and I suppose, like with all the other steps, people can have many different interpretations about how they work and what they mean. To me, step 12 is three parts. And just looking at the words in step 12, having had a spiritual awakening, part one, or as a result of these steps, part one. We tried to carry this message, part two, to alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all our affairs, part three. So, have I had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps? And if so, what's the proof of it? I mean, how do I know that I've had a spiritual awakening? Well, the first part of what I want to talk about is what a spiritual awakening means to me and what proof of a spiritual awakening is to me. What I found out over the years was I had a prejudice against the word spiritual. It was an unconscious prejudice, but it was like whoever goes to an AA meeting and hears somebody say, "Hey, I want to live a spiritual life, or I want to be spiritually awakened." I'm not saying that nobody has not said those. It's just it wouldn't be a very common thing to hear at an AA meeting. And if I would have heard somebody say, "Hey, I just want to be spiritually awake," I think I would look upon that person with a lot of judgment, thinking, well, who do they think they are? They want to go out and walk on water. But these are deep inside thoughts and feelings and stuff. And what really helped me and does to this day was I was invited to look at the term spiritual to mean the same thing as sane or sanity or sober, correct thinking. And it really changed my outlook on the steps, because I do want to live a sane life. And if it means the same as spiritual, that just changed how I reacted to that word, that term. There's a place in the book where it talks about, do not let any prejudice you have against spiritual terms deter you, blah, blah, blah. And that term, that I want to be a spiritual person, was deterring me. I had a prejudice, a prejudgment about it. I'm probably not the only one, but at any rate, when I changed my mind and thought of the word spiritual meaning the exact same thing as a sane way of living or a sane way of thinking, it was very helpful. And it was a result of the steps. So to me, what was proof that I've woken up spiritually, or I now have access to sane or sober thinking? Again, this was a process, and the way I understand the steps and the way the steps affected me was I was all the suffering I've ever had in my life, all the misery, all the dissatisfaction, all the sense of unfairness at different times of my life, sense of betrayal, the guilt, the shame, all those emotions, did I cause them? And the way I understand Alcoholics Anonymous, the way I understand what's presented to us in the big book, it's designed to show me, to prove to me that I have been the cause of my own misery. And to think and believe that, for me, is proof of an entire psychic change. Because throughout my life, of course, I would admit to parts of my own suffering and misery. Well, yeah, I did this and I shouldn't have, but look what they did. That would have been a reaction of mine, to take some responsibility and but really talk about where other people caused me to suffer. I can't find that in the big book, though. In fact, just two of the many places where that idea is talked about. One is in the beginning of inventory, where they say, so our troubles, we think, are of our own making. It's like, hey, this cloud is starting to dissipate. We're starting to think our troubles are of our own making. Then later on, after steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, they write, it's clear that we created our own misery. And was it clear to me that I created my own misery? Well, as a result of these steps, and I had good sponsorship too, just that's the way it was with me. I got to see, yes, I see where I have created, by the way I look at things, my own misery. And that couldn't be further or farther from how I used to think. That's a psychic change, in my opinion, a complete psychic change. You didn't cause me harm. You didn't cause me suffering. I created it in myself by the way I see things. And being, in my opinion, an entire psychic change, of course, it sounds different than how many people view their lives. And of course, differently than how I viewed my life. Okay, so part one, have I had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps? Okay, then tried to carry this message to other alcoholics. Well, what's the message that I'm trying to carry? I found that the message, as I understand it, is multifaceted. In the beginning, the message is, hey, you don't have to drink anymore. And anybody that's worked with brand new people, you know what that incredulous look is. What do you mean I don't have to drink? I can't. They'll often say, what do you mean I can't drink anymore? And I'll correct that in a real gentle way, of course. I say, no, it's not that you can't drink anymore. It's you don't have to. And to me, that's an introduction to responsibility. You can drink again. In fact, I've never understood the thousands of times at meetings I've heard people say, all I have to remember is I can't drink anymore. Because to me, that's just that's just a lie to ourselves. Of course we can drink again. All we have to do is go buy a bottle and drink it. But saying I'm not going to drink again, or I'm going to take responsibility whether I drink or don't drink, that seems more true to me. At any rate, so the message that that I try and carry, that as I understand it, is changes with with the maturity in the steps, which I'm an expert in taking a long time in maturing in the steps. And from, hey, Steve, you don't have to drink again, to you don't have to feel the way you're feeling ever again, to if you are willing to follow a different guide, you can have a life that's so wonderful. It's in the book they call it indescribable. And in the beginning, of course, those words just sounded like pie in the sky to me. And I didn't know that I was following a guide to my life, let alone I didn't know there was two. I mean, I always had some sense of wrong behavior and right behavior. And I picked pretty much always on the, I would say, wrong side. I just wanted what I thought I wanted. But it certainly wasn't based on a sanity or sobriety, meaning correct thinking. And so by default it wasn't spiritual at all. But the message that I learned and that I try and teach is there's another guide to follow, and the consequences of following this new guide, this higher power, if those are the words we want to use, the consequences of following this completely different guide is a wonderful life. That sounds simple enough, and I think it is that simple. And okay, so then the third part of step 12, and practice these principles in all our affairs. Well, over the years, that's had the significance of that direction or reflection from the people who wrote the book, if this was their reflection of step 12. And we tried to carry this message to alcoholics in all our affairs. That means all of them, all day long, every day, everything. And I know for a lot of years, I could read if I was asked to read the steps at the beginning of a meeting or share at a step 12 meeting, I had something to say about any part of that 12 step they were talking about. But to actually think what it says and what does it mean to practice these principles, well, first, I'd have to know what they are. And I would have to know what they are to an extent that I valued them, and that I valued them more than the lack of principles that I was following. Because, hey, as it tells us in our book, the people that went through the program, that recovered from alcoholism, that were so anxious to share what happened to them that they wrote a book about it to pass on to us, they came up with this conclusion that they were sure that God wanted us to be happy, joyous, and free. And the guide that I followed most of my life, that wasn't the result of following the ego or self guide, small s self, whatever we want to call it. It was always my aim, but never did it happen. Occasionally, I thought I got close, and I found that I settled. My life was okay. My report of my life was, it's okay as long as I just don't have the drama that I used to have. That, of course, came with drinking. And then when I quit drinking, that just showed up in other areas of my life that wasn't because of drinking. See, I made a mistake in the first step. I got, when I first came into AA, that, we're powerless over alcohol. Well, I wouldn't use those exact words because they seem kind of harsh, but I knew when I started drinking, things were going to go south, and my life was unmanageable. I don't know, and I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody that came into AA with a manageable life. Of course, my life was unmanageable. The mistake I made was I thought it was unmanageable because I drank. Therefore, if I quit drinking, it would be manageable. And I'm not saying that's the message that was taught at meetings to me. It's just what I heard. Quit drinking and your life will be manageable. That wasn't my experience. And it wasn't actually until I saw the connection between me creating my own misery and having an unmanageable life that I feel like I, quote unquote, got the first step. Just the degree that alcoholism affected me, I didn't really understand until until I saw that what the disease did to me was it allowed me to believe that just because I thought something was true, it was true. And I want to say that again. If I really believed something was true, I thought it was true. And when I believed that this person should have done this or should have done that, or in this situation, this should have happened and it didn't, or it shouldn't have happened and it did, I believed that that was true. I was separated from reality and didn't even know it. That's how alcoholism affected me. So um, lately, like, I don't know, like for the last 10 years, I have, and of course, Nancy will talk in a minute if I ever give her a chance. Um, I've spent a lot of time with other alcoholics that have been in AA for a long time, and their lives, they're not happy. And when I mean happy, I mean joy-filled, inner harmony, a sense that all is well. It's I identify because I spent so much of my life in that place where, well, basically things are okay because there's no immediate drama going on in my life right now. But I found that Alcoholics Anonymous offers us so much more than that, although that was a way better life than I was living. And so step 12, and the opportunity to, we use the words in AA, work with other people, but I found, just like it says in AA, that the effort in working with other people directly and always benefits me, not in a selfish way like what's mine. It just it benefits me greatly, and it's part of a spiritual law, which would be a different conversation. So it really, when people say it's a privilege to work with other people, I get it. It really is. And I get it, besides the intellectual understanding, in a concrete, specific way. I get what we talk about, a sane way of living. I get it stronger with every person I meet with. Okay, Nancy, enough out of me.
Well, thank you, Stephen. It's always a pleasure to hear your take on the steps. And welcome everyone who might be listening, and happy 2024. This has been a great year as Stephen and I have looked back through the steps and looked at our experience, and hopefully our experience will continue to grow and expand through continuing to work them ourselves. And that kind of brings me to step 12, which, as Stephen said, it is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And that is the first point of step 12. And a spiritual awakening, it took me also a long time to become awake to the cause of my misery, which was extreme self-centeredness. Things were the way I believed them to be. The steps help break that down. And as Stephen mentioned, some of us, it takes a long, long time. Our prejudices, which to me means, this insistence that I'm right about how I see things, that actually becomes an obstacle to this, to becoming awake to the misery. But the steps supply the remedy for that misery. And so I think, and I believe that this awakening is continual, maybe until it's not, but for me, it is something that continues to grow and develop. Working with others. So having had a spiritual awakening, we tried to carry the message. And like Stephen, the message that I want to carry is this one that, that it took me a long time to become teachable. And I believe that I am more teachable now, because insisting that I was right about everything meant that I was not teachable. And so I stayed stuck. But gradually, through the working of the steps, through, and honest, through growing in honesty and the desire to have a spiritual awakening, then that which had to be changed was gradually changed. And that showed me that this life, this spiritual life is really not a theory, that it is very real. And the time that it takes, evidence of that grows shorter and shorter. And, this spiritual law that Stephen talked about is that, you have it by giving it away. And, that idea makes no sense to our little self, our false self, or our ego self. It makes no sense. It obviously says you don't have what you give away. But this is not of the ego. This is of the spirit. This is the realm of the spirit, where we try to pass on our experience, not directing other people, but being directed, giving the meetings, to one who knows. It's not me telling someone what to do. This was demonstrated to me in my early sponsors, who I noticed, and they didn't tell me they were doing this. I just noticed. They didn't say, oh, you should get married, or you should move, or you should do this, or you should do that. They did not tell me what to do. And especially if I asked them, I do recall asking, should I move? Should I get married? They would just laugh. They would just laugh, because they would say, I don't know how to direct my own life. I sure can't direct yours. So it was always an encouragement that what was good for me would be good for you. And that good for me would be to develop that relationship with my higher power. Now, a good sponsor will, in my view, will be a bridge, and hopefully, having overcome some of their difficulties, especially in the beginning, with drinking, maybe much later with emotional sobriety, that all of that is part of it, and that I continue to do that because it is so important to a life of sane and happy usefulness. It goes against the ego. I think, what does Bill say? It works when nothing else does. It gets us out of ourselves. And that means, our little self, that one that wants to ruminate on unfairness or victimhood, or anything else that is absolutely not productive. And so to see that all of this is guided by a far more visionary source than some blind self-centeredness, that is for me the purpose, and that it's much easier to be quiet and be a listener, and to offer suggestions. But to offer the suggestions that worked for me. Have I tried these suggestions, right? Have I done what was offered to me? What has been given to me? Where is the weakness in my thinking? Maybe our book says, where is my thinking soft and mushy? And have I tried to rectify that, with God's help? That is the all-important ingredient in any sponsor-sponsee relationship, in my view, that it is God that is in charge, and for me to be as clear of a messenger as I can. And for me, it means, have I accepted the message? Have I accepted the message to the best of my ability, and practice these principles in all of my affairs? And that makes me a much clearer channel to be the best sponsor that I can be at this point in my own sobriety. I think I'm done.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And Lara, I hope you don't edit this part out. We both want to thank you so much for your inspiration and leadership over the past year in these steps and in so many other areas of life. You're awesome.
Yeah, I would add, your dedication and your passion for AA, none of us would be here, without people like you, without our former sponsors, without meetings being available, none of us would be here right now. So our purpose, to pass it on.
So thank you very much. And we're all looking forward to a happy, prosperous, useful new year.
Amen.
Bye-bye.